My mom made us weigh ourselves twice every morning because the first reading might be wrong and took away love based on the number. And when I asked her why she did this to us, she pinched my stomach and said, "Look at your sister. She understands that beauty requires sacrifice." I just stared at her, and that was 10 years ago, and today she's in maximum security after they raided her home. After I turned 8 and my older sister Chloe was 9, my mother became the most weight-obsessed beast I've ever met, where every morning started with stepping on the scale twice because the first reading might be wrong. And if either of us gained even half a pound, we'd lose privileges like watching TV or playing outside because the rule was simple: the heavier you were, the less love you deserved. I myself couldn't stand the hunger, and it was like I couldn't think about anything other than food, so I found a way to secretly eat crackers in the bathroom while Chloe became mom's perfect little skeleton, her nightly routine consisting of jumping jacks for 2 hours from 8 to 10 p.m. She'd chew food just for the taste, then spit it into napkins that she'd shove behind radiators at school, and instead of our mom getting her help, she rewarded her even more. So when Chloe hit 65 pounds at age 12, mom took her on a $2,000 shopping spree at the mall for designer jeans in size 0 and crop tops to show off her jutting ribs, anything she wanted. "Look at your sister," mom would tell me while pinching my stomach. "She understands that beauty requires sacrifice." I so desperately wanted to be the girl who didn't need anyone or anything, but the truth is I wasn't, so I started trying to earn my mom's love too. But instead of starving myself, I'd bring home straight A report cards, clean the house spotless each morning, and win every science fair. But it was never what she wanted, as she'd always say. "You should direct all that energy into something useful, like fixing your diet." I always knew what she was doing was wrong, but whenever I tried bringing it up to other family members, they would just talk about how my mom had a perfect figure and I ought to listen to her. So I gaslit myself into thinking it was normal until I turned 13. That's when I came home to Chloe passed out in the hallway with an empty bottle of mom's prescription diet pills next to her, and my hands trembled as I dialed 911 and immediately tried to put her in the recovery position. When I heard her whisper, I pressed my ear up to her lips and she said with a shaking voice, "I just wanted to lose 5 more pounds for mom's birthday." And when she woke up in the hospital bed, the first thing she asked was whether she looked skinnier, which is when I knew I'd lost my sister forever. After that, I started playing along just to survive by skipping breakfast and dinner almost every day and making sure to suck in my stomach whenever I was around my mom, just to stop her from screaming at me. But when I turned 15, something shifted and my dad finally came home after working overseas since I was a child, and one of the first things he did when he came back was file for divorce and full custody. Mom fought it hard, but not even she had an explanation for the state of me and Chloe's medical records, so I moved in with dad and slowly learned to eat normally again while Chloe told the court she wanted to stay with mom, and by senior year I was healthy, playing volleyball and actually enjoying food. Fast forward to when I turned 18, I hadn't seen my mom in years and my dad asked if I wanted to spend my birthday with her and my sister, so I nodded, not thinking it would be a big deal, and when the day came I wore loose clothes to avoid comments about my body, but nothing could prepare me for what I saw. The second Chloe answered the door, bile rose in my throat because she looked like those cancer patients you see online with cheekbones cutting through tissue paper skin, arms like twigs, and hair falling out in patches. "Chloe, what the F?" I started, but she interrupted, "Oh my gosh, you've gotten so effing huge." My heart shattered, and before I could respond, mom appeared behind her and shrieked, "What have you done to yourself?" grabbing at my stomach. "You were finally getting somewhere and now look at you, you're disgusting." I tried to leave, but mom blocked the door saying, "You're not going anywhere until you drink this," as she pulled out one of those meal replacement shakes. "It's 200 calories, you need to get back on track right now." When I refused, she tried to physically force it into my mouth, but the smell made me gag because it was clearly expired, chunky, and rotten, so I yelled, "Mom, stop," but she got Chloe to hold my arms while she tried to pry my mouth open. I was screaming and crying while the shake spilled everywhere, and she kept saying this is for your own good while basically waterboarding me with diet products until I managed to break free and run to the bathroom, locking myself in while calling dad as they pounded on the door with mom screaming that I was choosing to be ugly and spitting on everything she taught me. Dad called 911 and drove over himself, and by the time police arrived I'd vomited 3 times from the stress and whatever expired chemicals had gotten in my mouth. The police took one look at Chloe and called paramedics for her too, and I didn't know it at the time, but we were about to take revenge on my mom together. The paramedics rushed Chloe onto a stretcher while I stood there shaking, watching my sister's skeletal form disappear into the ambulance, and that's when she grabbed my hand with her bony fingers and pulled me close, her lips barely moving as she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "She made me take laxatives this morning, too." My stomach dropped as outside mom was screaming at the police officers about her parental rights, waving her arms and putting on a show for the neighbors who'd come out to watch while one officer kept trying to calm her down and another took notes. I climbed into the ambulance with Chloe where the EMT, a young guy with kind eyes, started checking her vitals, his face growing more concerned with each reading as the heart monitor showed dangerous bradycardia. Her heart was barely beating fast enough to keep her alive. My phone buzzed with a text from mom who was following the ambulance in her car. "You're destroying our family. How could you do this to us?" The EMT muttered something under his breath while recording Chloe's weight at 78 pounds, then shook his head and adjusted the 4-drip. At the hospital entrance everything turned into chaos as mom screeched to a halt in the parking lot and ran toward us shouting about her medical power of attorney, waving papers in the air and demanding to be let through, yelling, "I'm her mother. I make all medical decisions for my daughter." That's when dad stepped forward from where he'd been waiting by the emergency entrance and held up his own stack of documents, saying, "Actually, I filed emergency paperwork this morning and Judge Martinez signed it an hour ago." Mom's face went white then red because dad had known this would happen and had been prepared. The hospital staff wheeled Chloe through the automatic doors while mom tried to follow, but security stepped in to check everyone's documentation. and then a social worker appeared, a woman in her 30s with a sympathetic smile and a clipboard, introducing herself as Sarah from Hospital Social Services. I need to speak with family members about Chloe's care, she said, turning to me first with a slightly shifting expression. You're the sister who called 911? I nodded, and she asked, can you explain why you haven't been in contact with Chloe for 3 years? Why did you abandon her when she was sick? The question hit me like a punch, and I tried to explain about the custody battle and Mom's restrictions, but Sarah kept writing notes with that same concerned look while Mom jumped on this immediately, saying she left us, she chose her father over her family, and now she shows up and causes all this drama. A nurse appeared in the doorway and said we need to start treatment immediately, who's making medical decisions, and while Dad and Mom argued over paperwork, I had to choose between staying with Chloe or giving my statement to the police who were waiting. Mom was already at the intake desk filling out forms, and I could hear her telling the nurse something about me. My younger daughter has a history of violence. I have texts where she said she wanted to unalive me. The nurse's eyebrows rose as Mom pulled out her phone and scrolled through old messages, and I remembered those texts sent when I was 13 right after Chloe's OD. Stupid teenage venting that said things like, I hate you so much I could unalive you, after she'd forced me to weigh myself in front of relatives. Security cameras were everywhere in the hospital, and one was pointed directly at the intake area recording everything, so I thought good, let them see Mom's performance. Dad arrived just as Mom found Chloe's assigned doctor, a tired-looking man in scrubs, and she immediately launched into her concerns about my mental stability, how I'd shown up after years of no contact and triggered this whole incident. Behind them, through the glass doors of the trauma bay, I could see Chloe's monitors starting to alarm as her heart went into palpitations and the medical team rushed to her side. I ran toward the trauma bay, but the doctor treating Chloe held up his hand as they were pushing medications and adjusting her to stabilize her arrhythmia, so I pressed against the glass watching helplessly while behind me Mom kept talking to anyone who would listen. The intake nurse was typing notes into the computer and I caught a glimpse of the screen. Sister has anger issues per mother. When Dad's lawyer arrived 20 minutes later, I felt a moment of relief, but his face was grim as he pulled Dad aside and said, we have a problem. She's been recording conversations. Mom smiled that cold smile I remembered from childhood and held up her phone again, saying, I've been documenting everything for the past month, every interaction, every phone call. She hit play on a recording and my voice filled the waiting room, edited and clipped to remove context. I hate you enough to hurt you. The security guard shifted uncomfortably and Sarah the social worker made more notes, and even Dad's lawyer looked concerned and said quietly, the thing is, these recordings could complicate everything if she's been building a case. An alarm went off in the trauma bay and through the glass I watched the medical team working frantically over Chloe as someone mentioned the word code, because my sister had briefly flatlined but they'd brought her back. 2 police officers entered the waiting area, one holding an evidence bag containing containers from Mom's purse, the same meal replacement shake she'd tried to force on me, and the officer examined one closely and said, ma'am, these products expired in 2019. And this one? He held up a container with a skull and crossbones warning label. This hasn't been legal for sale since 2016. Where did you get these? Mom's composure cracked slightly as she replied, those are prescription supplements from my doctor, and the officer asked which doctor, pulling out his notepad. Before she could answer, another official arrived from Child Protective Services, and the woman introduced herself and looked directly at Dad, saying, we've received a report of medical neglect and endangerment. We'll need to investigate both parents. Dad's face crumpled because he thought he was saving us, but now he was under investigation too. The next few hours blurred together as Chloe was stabilized and moved to the ICU, and Mom managed to convince several staff members that I was a danger to my sister's recovery by showing them my old social media posts and screenshots of me eating pizza at college parties. Look at her, glorifying binge eating. She's a terrible influence on someone with an eating disorder, she claimed, and Sarah the social worker listened to everything, occasionally glancing at me with that same concerned expression. By the time visiting hours were established, the hospital had restricted my access to Chloe, allowing only parents to visit one at a time, and Mom's phone rang and she answered it with fake tears in her voice, playing up the worried mother act for my old volleyball coach. Yes, Coach Johnson, I'm so worried about her. She's having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you could talk to her. She always listened to you. The manipulation was spreading as Mom recruited allies and built her narrative, and she ended the call and immediately made another, this time to someone from her Pilates class who worked at the local news station. Dad's lawyer pulled out a thick folder and his frown deepened as he found something. There's a court order here from 3 years ago. She was granted sole medical decision-making authority. He showed it to Dad. You never formally contested this. Dad shook his head, confused. I didn't even know about it. I was overseas, and he checked the date and realized this was filed one day before I got back, one day before I filed for divorce. Mom had been planning for years. My phone started buzzing with notifications from a social media post I'd made asking for support, but the comments weren't what I expected, as Mom's friends were flooding in with concerned messages like, your mother is worried sick about you. This vendetta against your family needs to stop. Get help before you hurt someone. She'd mobilized her entire network against me, each comment painting me as unstable, violent, and dangerous, some even referencing those old texts. I tried to respond, but more comments poured in faster than I could type, and someone had screenshotted my post and shared it in a local moms group with the caption, this poor mother dealing with a violent daughter. Dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, don't engage, you're just giving her more ammunition, but the damage was spreading and my phone rang again. It was Coach Johnson. Hey kiddo, I just talked to your mom. She's really worried about you. Maybe we should all sit down for some family therapy. I know a good counselor. Even Coach had been turned, so I hung up without responding. The next morning I woke up at Dad's house to find a news van parked outside as the local morning show was running a segment on family disputes and hospital drama, where Mom had given an interview looking perfectly put together and tearful as she described her troubled daughter who'd caused a scene. The reporter, someone from Mom's Pilates class, didn't ask any hard questions about the expired diet shakes or Chloe's condition, just let Mom play the victim for the cameras. Inside the hospital things were getting worse, and when I arrived to check on Chloe, security stopped me at the entrance because a restraining order had been filed. Mom appeared from around the corner with official papers and said loudly enough for the guard to hear, "It's for everyone's safety. My daughter has been making threats, harassing our family. I have evidence." She showed the guard her phone with the edited recordings, the old texts, and statements from her concerned friends, and the security guard looked at me differently now, his hand moving closer to his radio. Dad's lawyer reviewed the restraining order paperwork and said it's temporary, but if it's granted you won't be able to come within 500 feet of your mother or visit Chloe in the hospital, and Mom smiled that cold smile again, she'd won this round. That evening Dad's girlfriend called and broke up with him, saying she couldn't be involved in such a toxic situation because the stress was affecting everyone. I made a decision. If Mom wanted to play dirty, I could too, so I remembered she had a sister, and who she'd cut off years ago, and I found her on social media. She lived 2 states away but had been following the situation online, so I sent her a message, "I need to know what happened between you and my mother." Her response came quickly, "I've been waiting years for someone to ask," and we arranged a video call for that night. What and told me changed everything as she pulled out old diary entries from when they were teenagers describing forced dieting, pills their mother made them take, and competitions between sisters that went too far. She did the same things to me, and said, showing me a photo from high school, but when I tried to report it she convinced everyone I was jealous of her and making it up for attention. One diary entry made me gasp because Ann had written about their mother's diet pills and how my mom had started stealing them and giving them to Ann, the same brand I'd seen in the evidence bag. She learned it all from our mother, and said, "And when our mom died your mother kept her med stash for sentimental reasons." I had ammunition now but using it would mean war, so the next morning I tried to record Mom during a chance encounter in the hospital parking lot, holding my phone low as she approached, but she spotted it immediately and her entire demeanor changed as tears appeared instantly and she clutched her chest, wailing loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why are you doing this to our family? Haven't you heard us enough?" People stopped to stare and some pulled out their own phones to record her perfect performance as the concerned mother being persecuted by her unstable daughter, and when I lowered my phone she smirked for just a second before the tears returned. That afternoon the temporary restraining order was granted and I was legally barred from seeing my dying sister, and Dad's lawyer put it bluntly, "She's been planning this for years, every interaction, every text, every family gathering. She's been building her case." "But what about Chloe?" I asked. "She needs help. Your mother has legal custody and medical decision-making authority unless we can prove she's actively harming Chloe," he replied. "She is," I said, "those expired shakes, the laxatives Chloe mentioned. It's your word against hers and right now she has a restraining order against you and character witnesses saying you're unstable." I realized then what I was up against, that this wasn't just about Mom being controlling or abusive. She built an entire system to protect herself and ensure she could never be held accountable, using my own anger and teenage mistakes as the foundation. But I wasn't the same scared 13-year-old who'd sent those angry texts because I had resources now. I had Ann's testimony and Dad's support, even if it was costing him everything, and most importantly I had the truth. The war for Chloe's life was just beginning and I finally understood we were fighting not just Mom but years of careful manipulation, a network of enablers, and a system that believed a well-dressed mother over a desperate daughter. I thought back to Chloe's whispered words in the ambulance. She made me take laxatives this morning, too, and knew my sister was counting on me and this time I wouldn't let her down. Mom's network moved faster than I'd anticipated, and within hours of the restraining order being granted I received a notification that my college had placed me on academic probation pending an investigation into concerning behavior, citing anonymous reports about my violent tendencies and suggesting I seek counseling. I sat in Dad's kitchen staring at my laptop screen while he paced behind me, his phone not stopping its ringing with clients canceling appointments and his boss suggesting he take time off as Mom's influence was spreading like poison through every aspect of our lives. And called that evening with more revelations after digging through old photos and finding disturbing pictures from their childhood where their mother had marked their bodies with a pen circling problem areas. And in one photo Mom stood proudly next to a visibly malnourished and holding a certificate from some bogus weight loss camp. She kept these as trophies, and said, her voice shaking, even after I begged her to throw them away. I asked Ann to scan and send everything because we needed proof of the generational pattern, but as the files came through I noticed something odd in the metadata. The scan dates were from just last week, and when I questioned and she hesitated and admitted, "Your mother contacted me a month ago, said she was worried about you and that you were showing signs of mental illness. She wanted to know if there was a family history she should be aware of." My blood ran cold because Mom had been laying groundwork everywhere, planting seeds of doubt even with Ann. The next morning brought another blow when Madison, Chloe's friend who'd been dating Mom's lawyer, showed up at Dad's door looking exhausted and said nervously, "I need to tell you something about the lawyer. We're not really dating. Your mom hired him to get close to me to get information about Chloe." She explained how the lawyer had orchestrated their chance meetings and how Mom had been using Madison as an unwitting spy for months, gathering intelligence about Chloe's true condition. She knew Chloe was getting worse, Madison said. She knew and she didn't care. All she wanted was ammunition against you. I asked Madison if she'd testify but she shook her head and said I signed something, pulling out a crumpled document that was a confidentiality agreement with a $50,000 penalty, and Dad's lawyer confirmed it was legally binding. Mom had thought of everything. That afternoon I decided to visit the hospital despite the restraining order, parking across the street to watch the entrance for a shift change, and that's when I saw Mom exit with a woman in expensive clothes, laughing and touching her arm familiarly. I followed them to a nearby coffee shop and through the window watched Mom pull out papers and the woman sign something before handing Mom a thick envelope that looked like cash, so I snapped photos with my phone, zooming in as much as possible. After they left I entered the coffee shop and the barista told me the blonde woman had been coming in a lot lately, always meeting different people with paperwork, and I thanked him and left, my mind racing about what the money was for. The answer came that evening when Dad received a call from his bank because someone had tried to access his accounts using old security questions only Mom would know, and the bank had flagged it as suspicious but it was clear she was trying to drain him so he couldn't afford lawyers. We spent the night changing all his passwords and calling credit agencies but the damage was already spreading as his credit cards started getting declined because someone had reported them as stolen, and Mom was systematically destroying our ability to fight back. Sarah, the hospital social worker, called the next day wanting to meet, saying she had concerns about Chloe's care she couldn't discuss over the phone, so we met at a diner and she slid a folder across the table. "I shouldn't be showing you this," she said quietly, "but something's not right." The folder contained multiple versions of Chloe's intake forms, all signed by Mom on the same day but with different information about her weight and medical history, and Sarah explained she kept changing her story. It's like she was trying to find the version that would get the response she wanted. The final version painted Chloe as critically ill but placed all blame on my recent visit. "There's more," Sarah said, showing me photos she'd taken of the hospital gift shop. "Your mother's been buying lots of things, flowers, cards, chocolates, but they never make it to Chloe's room." The photos showed Mom purchasing hundreds of dollars worth of gifts, and Sarah continued she gives them to the staff, different nurses, doctors, administrators, always with a card about how grateful she is. Mom was buying loyalty. Sarah leaned forward. "I've been in social work for 10 years and I've seen abusive parents before, but this is something else. She's not just manipulating the system, she's orchestrating it." I asked if Sarah would document this but she looked conflicted. "I want to help but she's already complained about me to my supervisor, said I was showing bias, one more complaint and I could lose my job." Another ally neutralized. Mom's chess game was flawless. That night I couldn't sleep, thinking about Chloe alone in that hospital room, so I remembered a shared email account we had as kids and logged in, and in the drafts folder was a new message from Chloe dated yesterday. "I know you're trying to help. Mom says you're sick, that you're trying to hurt us. But I remember what you did when I took those pills. You saved me. She's making me take more things, different pills. She says they're vitamins, but they make me feel worse. I'm scared. Please don't give up on me." I sobbed reading it and started typing a response, but before I could finish the account logged me out and the password had been changed, because Mom had found it and now had evidence of me violating the restraining order. Sure enough, the next morning Dad's lawyer called because Mom had filed an emergency motion claiming I was stalking Chloe online and wanted the restraining order extended and criminal charges filed, with the hearing set for the next day. Dad's lawyer said we needed character witnesses, but when we started making calls we discovered Mom had already poisoned those wells too, as my college advisor, former teammates, and even my old boss at a restaurant had been contacted and fed lies about my behavior. In desperation I reached out to my retired high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Peterson, who listened to the whole story and said, "I always wondered about your home situation. You and Chloe both had signs but your mother was so involved, so concerned. She fooled us all." He agreed to write a character statement but warned she's had years to build her narrative, "You've had days." The night before the hearing I sat with Dad going through our circumstantial evidence and Dad's lawyer wasn't optimistic, saying we were going to lose, and that's when my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered and a young, nervous male voice asked, "Is this Chloe's sister?" "I'm Jake, a nurse at the hospital, night shift. I need to talk to you about your sister." We arranged to meet at a 24-hour restaurant and Jake arrived in scrubs, looking scared and saying I could lose my license for this, but I can't stay quiet anymore. He showed me photos on his phone of Chloe's medication chart with wrong doses and medications scheduled incorrectly, and explained your mother insists on being present for all medication administration, showing me another photo of Mom's open purse with pills of different colors and shapes inside. "She adds things," Jake whispered. "I've seen her crush pills into the apple juice and stir powder into the protein shakes." When he questioned it once she said they were vitamins but he knew they weren't, and he hadn't reported it because she was friends with the charge nurse and everyone loved her, but Jake had been documenting everything and had even pocketed one of the pills to have it tested. "Your sister is getting worse because of those pills," he said. "Her body can't process them properly but the doctors just see an eating disorder patient who isn't recovering." I asked if he'd testify but he paled and said, "I can't, if she finds out I talked to you." I understood, but Jake gave me the photos and documentation, and as we left he grabbed my arm and said, "There's something else. Your mom's been talking about transferring Chloe to a specialty clinic in Arizona, but I looked it up, it doesn't exist. The address is just desert." My blood ran cold as I realized Mom was planning to make Chloe disappear. I called Dad's lawyer immediately but he was skeptical about using the illegally obtained evidence, and the hearing was in 6 hours with evidence of abuse but no legal way to use it and witnesses too scared to testify because the system was completely under Mom's control. But we had something Mom didn't expect, Chloe herself, because in all her planning Mom had made one mistake, assuming Chloe would always be her compliant skeleton. The draft email wasn't just a cry for help, it was hidden in the text using our old childhood code and she'd left information about the pills, the times she was forced to take them, and details about Mom's plans, because Chloe had been gathering evidence too and had found a way to share it. The hearing was in 6 hours and Mom thought she had won, but the war for Chloe's life was far from over. The emergency hearing arrived faster than expected, moved up to 8 a.m., so we scrambled to get ready and arrived at the courthouse to find Mom already there surrounded by her support network, and inside the courtroom I spotted Madison in the back row not making eye contact. Judge Catherine Winters entered and reviewed the restraining order extension request while Mom's lawyer presented the edited recordings and testimonies about my unstable behavior, and when it was our turn Dad's lawyer presented Anne's diary entries, the expired diet shakes, and Jake's documentation, but Judge Winters kept frowning, calling it hearsay and illegally obtained information. She looked at me and asked, "Young lady, did you access your mother's email without permission?" But before I could explain, Dad's lawyer touched my arm. The judge reviewed documents for 20 minutes while Mom sat perfectly still, the flawless concerned mother, before announcing, "I'm granting the restraining order extension, and I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges regarding cyber harassment and stalking." My stomach dropped, but then the courtroom door burst open and Sarah the social worker rushed in with a thick folder, saying, "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption but I have urgent information regarding the welfare of the minor child." She handed the folder to the judge and said, "These are Chloe's medical records from the past 72 hours. Her condition has deteriorated rapidly. She's developed refeeding syndrome and the attending physician believes someone has been interfering with her treatment." Mom's lawyer jumped up but Judge Winters snapped, "Sit down, counselor," and flipped through the records, her expression growing more concerned. Sarah continued, "There's more. Hospital security footage shows Mrs. Mom's last name, adding unidentified substances to Chloe's feeding tube." The courtroom erupted and Mom stood up pointing at me, yelling, "This is her doing. She's turned everyone against me." Judge Winters banged her gavel, "Order. Sit down immediately." Sarah showed the security footage to the judge and I could see Mom crushing pills into Chloe's feeding bag, and Sarah said, "Your Honor, Child Protective Services is requesting immediate intervention. Chloe's life is in danger." The judge's face hardened and she turned to Mom's lawyer, "Counselor, can you explain your client's actions in this footage?" He shuffled papers nervously, "I wasn't aware of this evidence." "You'll have plenty of time," Judge Winters said. "Bailiff, please take Mrs. Mom's last name into custody pending investigation for child endangerment." Mom's scream echoed through the courtroom, "No, you don't understand. She needs those supplements. She'll get fat without them. I'm saving her." As the bailiff approached, Mom tried to run but two more bailiffs were waiting and caught her, securing handcuffs as she continued screaming, and in the chaos Madison stood up and approached Dad's lawyer, pulling out her phone. "I recorded her," she said quietly, "the lawyer, at dinner last week. He was coaching me on what to tell people about Chloe's condition. I know I signed that agreement but I can't let Chloe die for this." Judge Winters called for order and looked at me, her expression softer. "Young lady, while your methods were inappropriate and illegal, it's clear you were trying to protect your sister. I'm dismissing the restraining order and recommending the DA decline to pursue charges. However, you are to have no contact with your mother pending the criminal investigation. Is that understood?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and the judge continued, "As for Chloe's care, I'm granting emergency custody to Mr. Dad's last name, effective immediately." The rest happened in a blur as Mom was taken to county jail, Dad rushed to the hospital, and Madison handed over her recordings. At the hospital I was finally allowed to see Chloe, who looked even worse than before, and the nurse explained Mom's pills had been a dangerous cocktail of diuretics, laxatives, and expired stimulants. Dad and I sat on either side of her bed in silence because we'd won the legal battle but Chloe was barely alive. That evening Jake found me in the hospital cafeteria and slid over a test results printout that med I pocketed. It tested positive for a substance that was banned in 2016, same stuff that unalived 3 people at that weight loss clinic in Nevada. He shook his head, "Your mom was giving her poison." Over the next days more truth emerged as police searched Mom's house and found stockpiles of expired diet products, and flew in to provide testimony while the prosecutor built a case for attempted unaliving. Mom's network crumbled quickly, but the damage was done and Chloe remained in critical condition as the years of malnutrition had damaged her heart, her bones, her organs, and doctors spoke of management rather than recovery. We took shifts sitting with Chloe, and on the 5th day she opened her eyes and whispered, "Is Mom coming?" My heart broke, and I said gently, "No, Mom can't come." Her eyes filled with tears. "Did I do something wrong? Did I gain weight?" Dad squeezed her hand. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Mom is sick, she hurt you, we're going to take care of you now." The deprogramming would take months, the doctors warned, and physical recovery even longer, and 2 weeks later Mom's lawyer contacted Dad with a deal. She'd plead guilty to child endangerment for supervised visitation, but Dad threw the letter in the trash, saying she doesn't get to negotiate. Mom faced up to 15 years in prison. Chloe was transferred to a specialized eating disorder facility after 3 weeks in the ICU, and the place was expensive and Dad's savings were gone but Aunt offered to help. Madison visited and apologized. "I'm so sorry, I thought I was helping. Your mom made it sound like you were the problem," but Chloe just stared at her, too exhausted for forgiveness. The facility had strict rules and Chloe hated it at first but slowly she began to engage, and I returned to college and the academic probation was lifted. Mom's trial date was set for 6 months out and from jail she sent rambling, paranoid letters claiming she was a victim of a conspiracy. 3 months into treatment Chloe had a breakthrough in family therapy. "I knew," she said quietly, "I knew the pills were making me sick, but I took them anyway because at least when I was dying she paid attention to me." The therapist guided us through that session and Dad cried, the first time I'd seen him break down completely. And progress wasn't linear as Chloe had setbacks but Anne's regular visits and her own recovery story helped Chloe see that healing was possible. 5 months after Mom's arrest the prosecutor called with an update. Mom had agreed to plead guilty to multiple counts of child endangerment and assault, serving a minimum of 8 years, maximum of 12, with no possibility of contact with Chloe until she turned 25 and only if Chloe initiated it. "It's over," Dad said after hanging up, but we all knew it wasn't, not really. The facility recommended Chloe stay for a full year, so Dad worked overtime, I took a part-time job, and Aunt organized a fundraiser. And as Chloe's weight slowly increased, she began looking more like herself again. The biggest change was in her eyes as life returned to them. Mom's sentencing happened on a rainy Tuesday, but we didn't attend. Instead, we spent the day with Chloe at the facility playing board games and watching movies, and the news reported Mom's statement to the court showed no remorse, only insistence that society would thank her one day for trying to save her daughters from obesity.